The following production is brought to you by the Talkin Buds Leafs Show.
Here we go, Talkin Buds Leafs Show, episode 254. Ryan, are you still feeling sentimental and emotional from watching the Nylander brothers take to the ice together on Sunday night?
No, I really don't.
You don't feel sentimental? You don't think that's cool?
I had no emotional sentiment. That I actually felt bad because now Alex Nylander is going to go on waivers and he's going to get chipped by some team he doesn't want to play for.
I know. Well, you could always, I guess you could always pull the Jason Spezza and be like, I'm not playing for you.
I just don't think he is that. I just don't think he's at that point in his career that Jason Spezza was.
No disrespect to Alex Nylander. I last thing I want to do is chirp the guy after such a nice moment on Sunday. But is there a team in the league that's really clamoring for Alex Nylander?
Well, I heard this week that there was actually a couple teams kicking tires on him in the off season, but he wanted to come live with his brother in the city, and it's so funny watching them play. They're identical.
I know
the way they hold their sticks, the way they shoot the puck. The only difference is Nylander's speed is just like a whole other elite level and it's just a lot faster. But the way they hold their sticks, they're both right-handed shots. The way they both shoot the puck, they're identical.
Yes, and one of them is an elite NHL talent. The other one is not quite. But hey, I thought Alex played pretty well on Sunday against Utah. You texted me on Sunday night and you said, this is a grind watching this hockey game.
Yeah.
Something about the Utah Hockey Club you just found very difficult to watch.
Like, I'm listening to Overdrive this week, and Noodles and Hayes are going on and on about how great their unis are. And I'm like, I think they have the worst unis in the league.
No, that's a horrific. That's one of the worst takes you've ever had.
Dude, as soon as you put a diagonal like city name on your jersey, you've run out of ideas. There's no creativity in the marketing department.
The Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah, but you couldn't have just put why couldn't they just put like a Utah with like a circle around it? Have some classic as soon as you do like no disrespect to the PWHL.
Isn't that what it is? Like what sweater are you talking about?
The one they wore the other night where it's just a diagonal Utah.
Oh, yes.
It's terrible.
Yes, the logo that they have in the scorebug is circular. But yes, no, the on their jerseys it does. It just says it's just a diagonal Utah. That's right.
And I'm all for the PWHL, but like the way I haven't seen their new uniforms. I know they just got named something different, but like last year they all had that generic city name across the diagonally. It's just as soon as you see that, it's just there's no creativity in the marketing department, and I don't love the white and baby blue combination. I don't know what it is.
This is one of your worst takes you've ever had. When they eventually name themselves the Utah Yeti next year, it's a perfect color scheme. You can throw like a Yeti character on the front of the uni. It'll look fantastic. I love the color scheme personally. I love it.
Yeah, I'm watching it, and it's just maybe it's a Western Conference team, and they're not the Coyotes anymore. I have no emotional attachment to them whatsoever.
Alex Kerfoot, you got emotional attachment?
Yeah, I just had a hard time really settling into that game. But who could blame it? The first period was a little sleepy, and then they come out in the second, and here we go again. Big boys start rolling.
Full transparency, Ryan and I are coming to you a day before we would have liked to this week. And that's because if you've been paying attention to our game time ad reads in the podcast, you will know that we are going to see Creed in concert on Wednesday night. So we will be watching the Leaf game after the fact. So we are coming to you a day early. So we're not, at the time of this recording, we're not going to have line of sight over things like, is Auston Matthews playing in this game? Like that's still all up in the air. If you're going to take a look, Ryan has not seen the lines from practice today. He's a busy man. He works. So I'm going to read you the lines at Leaf practice today. Okay, ready? First line, McMahon, Tavares, Marner. Second line, William Nylander, Auston Matthews, and Pontus Holmberg. Now, remember, Matthew Nyes is injured and wearing a red non-contact sweater. So, like everybody had probably the same reaction that you just did and was like, Pontus Holmberg. But yes, that spot, he's just keeping the seat warm for Matthew Nyes. Line number 3, Nick Robertson, Fraser Minten, Alex Nylander, and Nikita Grabenkin sharing rushes on that line. And line 4, Steves, Dewar, and Lorentz. So I don't know if Auston Matthews is going to play on Wednesday. He had a quote after the game that was basically like, I think I need a couple more practices to get my legs and lungs back, which made me think maybe he's not playing Wednesday night. But either way, it's a positive sign to see that they're not just stapling him and Marner back together again.
Yeah. Pontus Holmberg. Man, they are thin right now.
Well, who else are you going to put there? What nice?
Yeah, I don't want to hear
Nick Robertson.
Yeah, Nick Robertson, who's just going to be I think Matthews. I think they would look at that and be like, Pontus is a little more responsible, I guess. Maybe we just want to make Matthews' night a little bit easier defensively and let him kind of get his legs back under him. Because Nick Robertson's not making anybody's life easy defensively when he's out there. But yeah, pretty. I mean, what else can you say though? Like, I mean, it sounds pretty underwhelming. But you look at their record, you look what they've done with all the injuries, and you can't really say it's underwhelming because these guys are playing extremely well.
Yeah, they are playing extremely well, and I think this leads to what our main topic of discussion is going to be on today's episode. You know, they're going to keep Mitch Marner away from Auston Matthews because Mitch Marner has been sensational since Auston Matthews went down with an injury. Jonas Siegel tweeted the other night that he has 2 points in every single game that Auston Matthews has been out.
Yeah,
and
he's been fantastic.
That's as elite as it gets. And I hate to go here, Ryan, but the conversation has resurfaced in the last couple of days, and it's Mitch Marner's next contract. Mm-hmm. And you and I have speculated. We both think that he and his camp are going to be looking for something north of $12 million. Based on the way he's played so far this season, I think he's made a very good case for that. You've said a couple of times that the best thing that's happened to him in his camp is Auston Matthews going down and going to Germany. But there are some people who are saying just sign him now. There's no scenario where he leaves and you upgrade your forward group, and other people are saying wait it out. What's the rush? What say you on this Mitch Marner contract quandary?
Yeah, I don't know. This is crazy. It would have been so much easier if he just wasn't playing well. And there's still a lot of season left. We talk about the November goats all the time. So you never know. The season could go on. Matthews can come back. You could start kind of playing like you did the first couple weeks of the season, which was left something to be desired. But I just think about a situation. I just think timing is just everything sometimes. I mean, him being up a year after Nylander was supposed to just really makes his situation a lot harder. Because, I mean, if you reverse the roles, like Marner probably would have been done. And then we would be talking about Nylander right now. And if we need to re-sign him. But I understand the argument of it's pretty hard to foresee them upgrading their forward group on paper without Mitch Marner. Like, I totally get that. But I mean, you also look like an idiot not realizing what this guy's done in the playoffs. And I think Nylander ranks ahead of him in playoff performance, no doubt. The numbers back that up. The eye test backs that up. I mean, you could make the argument that Auston Matthews has been just as bad as Nylander in the playoffs. I mean, as Marner in the playoffs. But I would say in most people's opinions, he's probably been better. So I just think, what is the point of signing him right now? There is no point. You sign him right now. Okay, Matthews comes back. He slows down a little bit. He doesn't look great. Then what? Everyone starts losing their fucking minds. They go into the playoffs. They get bounced in the first round again. He's brutal. I just signing him right now is just like, how bored are you to be thinking about that? Because it makes absolutely no sense, man.
I don't think it's boredom, Ryan. I think it's the fact that he's just been that good. Like, Ryan, the guy, listen, I have been as frustrated with Mitch Marner as anyone. And I have been firmly in the camp of, in previous years when they've been eliminated in the playoffs, I've been firmly in the camp of break the core up. Marner's the guy you got to move, so on and so forth. And I'm sitting here watching him play, and I'm like, this guy is unbelievable. The dude is good enough when he's on to take over a game on his own, and you've seen him do that in the last couple of weeks. You yourself have prognosticated that if he shoots the puck, he could be a 40-goal scorer in this league.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think that's where it's coming from. I think people are watching him going, this guy is electric, and when he plays the way he's been playing, he's a top 20 player in the world. And there's no scenario where he walks and you're instantly going to replace that production.
Well, that's the tough part that they're in.
Having said that, I'm still firmly in the camp that you got to wait this out. I just don't think it's a great look to sign him right now. I think it looks rushed, and I think it looks like you're panicking. At the end of the day, it's the playoffs that are going to get this guy paid and get him the money that he wants. And all we hear from anyone who's connected to the Marner camp is he wants to be here. He wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. So, like you said, what's the rush? If he wants to be here, he's going to sign. And if they go into the playoffs and he stinks, that actually helps your argument against him being like, actually, no, you're not a $12 million hockey player because once again in the playoffs, you disappeared. And also, if they get eliminated in the first round again, listen, if they continue on the trajectory that they're on this season, where they finish 1 or 2 in the Atlantic Division, they're going to be favored with home ice advantage going into the first round, no matter who they play. All right. And if they get eliminated again and lose that series, guess what? All this same discussion of we got to break this up, we got to break this up, we got to break this up is going to come up again. So if you want to keep him and not have to pay through the nose for him, then I think you wait and see what the production looks like in the playoffs. And listen, if he goes out and he's a GOAT, pay him his money. I'm definitely at the point with him where if you want 12-5, I'll give it to you, but I need to see it in the playoff. You need to be a difference maker night in and night out in the playoffs, the way William Nylander is.
Well, yeah, signing now is he's doing himself a disservice because he can go out and have his first 100-point season if he stays healthy. And he also has the ability to actually break through in the playoffs, and then his reputation is fixed. His number can go higher. I think at this point, you're right. If they go in and get dusted in the first round again, like it's going to be awful. And we've been through it. We've been through it year after year after year after year. But there's also some built-in excuses for him too, if you think about it. John Tavares is not going to be making what he's making next season. So like there's some open cap space for you to go out and be flexible with other dudes. But also, like Matthew Nyes is after going to get a pay raise, and it's tough to watch. It's tough to think about him just walking to free agency. And I know that cap space is kind of king sometimes. Like sometimes getting that cap space back is almost like getting a good player back because now you have the ability to go out and sign 2 guys for the price you would pay him. I think it's just unfortunate that they set themselves up to overpay every single forward that they have. But if you're talking about re-signing him, to me, it's just about the number. It's about what number is this guy actually going to ask for? Like, because right now, if he's just playing side by side with Nylander the whole year and they're both near 100 points, maybe he gets over 100 points, but Nylander has 45 goals or whatever. It's kind of a trade-off. How can Leafs management look at Marner and go, you're worth less than what Willie's getting paid? Well,
I don't think, Ryan, I don't think, see, here's the thing about the Marner camp. I don't think they see Nylander as the comparable.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if he keeps playing the way he's playing, from everything we've heard from people who know that camp and know the agent and know the family and all that kind of stuff, they're going in there and saying, we want Auston Matthews. We believe we're on the same playing field as Auston Matthews and Leon Draisaitl. That's what I think.
Him being in the same, him or Matthews being mentioned with Draisaitl, I think is a joke. And I know some Matthews lovers think that's a ridiculous take, but I'm sorry. Both those guys are not in Leon Draisaitl's world when it comes to producing when it matters.
Yeah, playoff success.
Like that to me, like whatever. They both, all of them have amazing regular season stats. Who gives a shit? You watch Leon Draisaitl in the playoffs, the guy's a fucking machine. And all these two guys have done is wilt over and over and over and over again. But they really put themselves in a tough situation because if he is the MVP of their team, leads them in points, is the catalyst, him and Nylander are the catalyst every single night, then if I was his agent, like put yourself in the agent's shoes. Like, why wouldn't you go in there and you have a pretty good case of why he should be getting paid this unless he goes into the playoffs and stinks. But also, like William Nylander scored some goals in the playoffs, but I don't think he's been like a huge difference maker. You know, Auston Matthews in the playoffs hasn't been a huge difference maker. Those guys got paid. So like I'm producing the exact same as they are in the regular season. I'm driving lines. I'm on the penalty kill. I'm on the power play. These two guys who already gotten paid also don't really show up in the playoffs either, especially in elimination games. And they get paid and I don't. Like, I just don't. It's just really bad timing for him that he's the last guy up.
And it coincides with all the playoff failures. That's the thing. Because, like we said earlier, if they get eliminated in the first round again, like playoff projection right now, okay, they would be Atlantic Division number 1 playing the New York Rangers as a wild card team. If they lose that series, like this is what we forget, and this is what I forget. I'm the one who comes on here all the time and says, win the division, win the division, win the division. You win the division, you're a favorite, okay? And if you lose to, like, you think people are spazzing the last 2 years, losing to the Bruins and losing to the Panthers in round 2. You win the Atlantic and you lose to a fucking wild card team, people are going to go berserk. Okay. Yeah. But at the same time, this organization every year comes out and says, we're running it back. So who's to say that even if they lose, they still won't pay Mitch Marner?
Well, I don't think anything will be as bad. Like they've already done that. Like the COVID year was the free walk to the final. And instead of them, it was Montreal. They've already kind of done that. They lost to Columbus in the playoffs, even though their team was kind of shitty that year and they barely squeaked in. But yeah, like it's really bad timing for Mitch, but it's kind of I think Mitch Marner's camp has a case to be over Nylander, just under Matthews, but and you look at the fans, their team isn't any better with him gone because look at the way he's playing in the regular season. You still got to make the playoffs, you know. Worst thing, I think everyone's nightmare is if the roster gets worse and all of a sudden they're in a bad spot where they're fighting for a wild card and somebody leaps them, and like, you still got to get there. But I don't know. But at the same time, can we really run this back one more year? But I can also see them. They've been pretty loaded with excuses, even though it's a different management group than it was in the past. But I'm sure they'll find a way to spin it. I'm sure Brendan Shanahan will get in there and. Well,
fuck. I'm sorry if they lose in the first round this year. I do not want to see that fucking guy's face. Like I don't want to see it. I'm sorry. I just not to go down this road, but I just look at the Pittsburgh Penguins right now and I'm like, you wasted 5 years of these guys' core by having the con artist running this franchise. If he was still general manager of this franchise, the Erik Karlsson contract would be here in Toronto. 100%. It would be. And that's a hypothetical, so we don't need to talk about that. But I don't, if they lose in the first round, I don't want to see Brendan Shanahan. So anyways, I think where we're coming from here is we don't envy the situation Brad Treliving is in when it comes to Mitch Marner. And personally, I think just to put a bow on this topic, I would still wait till the end of the season. I think he doesn't want to go anywhere. He wants to be a Maple Leaf. Use that to your advantage. You don't need to rush to sign him. Just let it play out. Just let it play out.
Yeah.
I don't see a world where he gets to free agency. He might threaten to go, call his bluff. at a certain point, you have to keep everything in line. And this organization has made it very clear that they see Auston Matthews as the franchise piece. That's why they put the C on him, yada, yada, yada. So Mitch Marner cannot make more money than Auston Matthews, and he needs to fall in line with that. So whether that comes in at $12 million in between Nylander and Matthews, so be it. But that is something Brad Treliving and Leafs management just cannot bend on.
Another thing you have to think about too, just to throw another quick point in here, is I don't really buy that any team is going to give him a massive number. Like, I really don't. Like, no. I don't think anybody in the market who's like a good team that he would go to and have like playoff success is offering him.
Any team or a good team?
No, yeah, I mean a good team. Because obviously, because if you're Mitch Marner, why would you want to go play for an organization that is awful and just like isn't going to make the playoffs? Yeah, you might be a stud. You might get away from the attention of the Toronto media, and you could live. You might get the bag. You'll get the bag, but like, I just like at this point in your career, you've been making close to $11 million for 7 years. Like, I think you're pretty set up financially for the rest of your life. And I know it's egos. Like, you don't want to be like, you do have a case to be where Matthews is and we're above Nylander. And like, yeah, you have all those cases, but it's like, what good team is going to offer him north of, I would even say $11 million to be on their roster? I honestly don't think that that's a viable option. Maybe I don't know everyone's cap situation, but like Carolina could use like a superstar to get them over the hump or whatever. But at the same time, if you're a team like that, you're looking at his playoff success being like, well, we already don't have success in the playoffs. So why would we go out and pay a guy whose his literal reputation is not having success in the playoffs? So I don't want to, like, you gotta stand your ground. I just don't think another team is going to offer him the bag, and a team that he would actually want to go to, and a competitive hockey team. I just don't think that's the case.
The 24-25 NHL season still has that new car smell, and the action is heating up at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
It's super easy for first-timers to get started at DraftKings Sportsbook. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win.
And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
I have two things I want to hit you with quickly before we end this for tonight. The second one is a hypothetical. We normally don't deal in hypotheticals, but I want to deal in one tonight. But firstly, I just need your opinion. What is this team going to do with Nick Robertson? I mean, you look at the roster, and when everybody's healthy, I don't see a place for him. He's gotten every opportunity. The thing to me that has like really stood out as concerning to Nick Robertson is Fraser Minten and Nikita Grabenkin have come in and made some sort of impact. And I just don't, in like 2 games. And I just don't think Nick Robertson has done that. And he's played in what? Just like, how many games has he missed this year? So 2, 3? Like, and I just don't know at the end of the day what they're going to do with him. Like, what do you do with him?
I just keep running them out there. Like, if you look at the guys who are injured, I think it's pretty safe to say that, I mean, I don't know this, but just based off past experience with aging guys being injured, I would go as far to say that I don't think Calle Jarnkrok is going to suit up for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. Nor would I want him to, because he's 33 years old. He's hasn't played a lot of hockey over the past 2 seasons.
He's having sports hernia surgery.
He's never really been a guy who's fleet of foot. I know he's defensively responsible, and maybe that's what you'll need, and maybe he can come back and provide that. But I don't know what's going on with this guy. I don't know what he's doing. He hasn't been healthy over the past 2 seasons. I don't really see him coming back and like stealing a spot or making an impact. And then you look at Max Pacioretty. Is he done for the year? Like,
yeah, who knows?
Like
knows?
when you're on your skates and you lose your balance and fall backwards, and whatever happened to his body in that sense, like his body's just broken down. Like, I just don't think he has what it takes to be healthy enough to play in the league anymore. So those are guys who would come in and immediately take his spot who aren't going to be in the lineup. But then you also get to a point where, yeah, you run him out every single night. But if we're 41 games in and he still has 1 goal, you're going to have to find a better option than that, because that's just not good enough for a guy who's supposed to provide offense, because he's not really providing anything else. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of the thing I've always said about him is I don't know that he can make an impact in a bottom 6 role, and there's just not a place for him in the top 6. He got a look the other night in the top 6 against Utah because they're so banged up, and I didn't love his game there. So I don't know. I think you're right. Just for lack of bodies, he probably will still play every night and still have a role in the bottom 6. And if you're him, you got to go back to the drawing board and find a way to make an impact, because that's the spot you have on this team. And if you want to make a difference, you're going to have to figure out how to be effective down there.
You got to figure out how to start putting the puck in the net.
Dude, that guy just goes out there and skates up and down the ice. And like he had a look the other night against Utah where he hit the post. I think did he hit the post, or did the goalie
he had
stone
like
him?
wide open net, and like a guy got a stick on it. It was kind of like a tough bang play. So I mean, it's some bad luck. But if this guy doesn't start putting puck in the net, like I don't know.
I know he's got to find a way to be more impactful, and that's just it. Okay. Last thing, and like I said, we don't normally deal in hypotheticals, but we're going to deal in a hypothetical here. Okay, it's well known that going into the deadline, the Leafs will be looking for some sort of depth center option. I don't think we need to sit here and throw out names. Brian Hayes set Twitter on fire yesterday when he said Sidney Crosby. I've heard like Nazem Kadri's been boundied about. I've heard Ryan O'Reilly potentially again now that Sheldon Keefe's gone. There's a bunch of other guys. We don't need to get into them. My question to you is, if you had the opportunity to get an impact third line center with term, because you don't do this if you don't have any, if the player for a rental, would you be willing to move off Easton Cowan?
So, for a rental?
No, not for a rental.
Not for a rental?
You don't move up. Like, let's just say the player has 1 more year left on his, like he's still here next year. So he's still a part of the window. But would you be willing? Because I think it would be ludicrous to move off a prospect like Easton Cowan for someone who's not guaranteed to be here for at least next year. So would you move off Easton Cowan to potentially bring in a depth, like an effective NHL caliber 3C, or potentially a 2C to like be in the mix with Tavares?
Yeah, kind of like a 1A, 1B, 2 line center. Yeah, I would. Yeah. I would. And I don't want to see them go get a rental. Like, I've seen enough of that. Like, there's no fucking way I want to trade any draft capital, any prospect for a rental, because I mean, if you really look at the history of the NHL, maybe someone can like school me on this. Like, what rentals really come in and just like elevated the team and they ended up going on a deep run? Like, I guess, I don't know. I maybe Oilers went and got Ekholm. Like, that was a big deal. But we've seen what rentals do for this hockey team, and they do nothing. So I don't, I don't think Nazem Kadri's realistic. I don't think Brad Treliving and the Calgary Flames are going to make a deal. Plus, there's the cap to consider. He just re-upped on a deal that was like pretty expensive. I think it's like in the $7 million range. I don't see Ryan O'Reilly. That's just a name somebody came up with. But I think if you were able to find a guy, like in the Jake McCabe situation, but obviously he has to be better than Jake McCabe, then I think all things are on the table because as much as we talk about like splitting up the core four, and like if they lose, then like Marner's got to go or whatever. But these guys are still in their prime, you know. Like it's if you bring them all back, they're still going to be in the same, like whether you like it or not, they're still going to be in the same situation going into the next season, where they're in a playoff spot, where they're back in the first round trying to win. So I think any player who can impact the roster in a serious way, starting this year, next year, and maybe even the year after, I think that's something you have to look at, because I don't know how far away Easton Cowan is. And maybe Easton Cowan's like the type of player that you don't really need either.
Oh, no.
Because
see, I'm gonna do something that rarely happens on the Talkin Buds Leafs Show, and I'm gonna take the opposite view on this. I want you to pull up your daily face-off, and I want you to look at the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars, through drafting and developing, have replaced their old core with a new young core. The old core, Ben, Sagan, Duchesne, have all been replaced with Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, Wyatt Johnson, Mason Marchment. And to me, Easton Cowan is that guy for this team. He's part of the next generation. When you're drafting guys like Easton Cowan, when you're how many times have we come on here and just shit all over Kyle Dubas drafting and developing of players, Matthew Nyes aside? So many times. And if you could do what Brad Treliving and his team did a couple of years ago, which is find a guy like Easton Cowan in the later part of the first round, that is how you're going to keep the cupboard restocked, and that is how you're going to continue to make sure your team is good. Because the last thing we want is to be in a situation that the Toronto Blue Jays are in right now, where you missed your window. And now you got to look at potentially rebuilding your roster because you missed the opportunity to win. And there's no guarantee that this core is even going to get to a Stanley Cup final. But if you have young, cheap pieces in the organization and you're drafting and developing, that will ensure that you are relevant into the next 5+ years as these guys all get older and start to age out. And I would just be very, very, very careful moving off a top tier prospect. To me, like that is something that I just, man, like they're still scrambling to reacquire draft picks because Kyle Dubas every deadline was just trading away future draft picks for Ryan O'Reilly and Nick Foligno. Like it's just, you can't do it. You can't do it anymore. This is the core. You guys are. I'm not saying you can't go out and get a player at the deadline. Absolutely. But if getting an impact player is going to cost you a future pillar of the organization, an Easton Cowan, a Matthew Nyes, hell, a Fraser Minten. If you're just a little patient with Fraser Minten, he might grow to be that 3C. He might take that mantle this year. If he continues to play well down the stretch, maybe they get to the deadline and they go, we don't need to spend to go get another center because Fraser Minten's doing a pretty damn good job. Yeah. So I would just be really, really careful moving off futures, because the last thing we want is, like, we're all looking, take Kyle Dubas out of it. We're all looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins right now and we're going, oh my God, is that ugly? Sinjino got 3 cups. Right? Like they got 3 cups. They had a phenomenal run. Mm-hmm. It's like when you do that and you just keep going all in. If you're winning championships, fine. But like the piper needs to be paid, and now they're paying it, and they stink. The Chicago Blackhawks. So just be really careful, because we as Leaf fans watched garbage for 20+ years.
Yeah,
until you think about
bad.
You think about the black hole that was the end of the Sundin era to the beginning of the Matthews
when the
era.
cap got introduced till Matthews got drafted. Just a fucking disaster.
You think of that, and that is like we as Leaf fans. I think you said earlier, you still got to make the playoffs. I think that's something we in Leaf Nation kind of take for granted sometimes, is that this team is pretty much a lock to make the playoffs every year. And I would just be really, really careful moving off a kid that has the upside and potential that Easton Cowan does.
Well, I think it's I think that's why like Hayes is smart for bringing up a name like Crosby, because it is like crazy whatever. But if that was a thing, wouldn't you move Easton Cowan for 2 years of one of the greatest hockey players to ever play the game, even though he is almost 40?
That's where it gets, again, this is super hypothetical, but yeah, like that. If a once in a generation player like Sid becomes available, that's a different story. But to just go like, let's just throw Nazem Kadri in there. Like, let's just pick Nazem Kadri. No, I'm not trading Easton Cowan. I love Nazem Kadri. I love him. He's the exact 3C that they need right now. The exact.
Never should have traded him in the first place.
No, exact guy that they need right now. But I'm not mortgaging my future to bring Nazem Kadri back. Like I'm not doing it.
But when I hear you talk like this, it's almost like an argument to bring Marner back. It kind of, to me, it kind of ties back into like the Mitch Marner contract signing, because you're telling me that like if you want to restock the covers and kind of age out the core a little bit, then that's kind of like what they need to wait for.
Yeah.
And listen, those guys are good enough to keep getting them to that spot. So even though they lose this year in the first round, it's an absolute disaster. The excuse wagon can come out and be like, we actually have a couple dudes coming up to fill those spots that we've been missing over the past couple seasons because we've been trading away draft pick. So let's keep these guys who keep getting us to the dance, and hopefully guys like Minten, Cowan, Nyes could fill in those spots. And this window is basically till Auston Matthews' expiring contract or Nylander's expiring contract. So I don't know. It's like almost another argument you could make.
Ryan, here's the thing with that, though. I'm not opposed to bringing Marner back. I just think it needs to be at the right number. But the thing about, I brought up the Dallas Stars, okay? The Dallas Stars drafting of players has been on point. Jason Robertson was drafted 39th overall. Wyatt Johnson was drafted 23rd overall. Like they're finding, yes, that's a first round selection, but it's not like these are top 5 picks, right?
Yeah.
And these guys are playing on their top line. So your drafting and developing needs to be on point. So if you do want to go the route that I'm saying, which is like you want to build and age out your current core, that only works if your drafting is top notch and you can find talent. Because if this core is going to get you in the playoffs every year, so you're picking in the 20s. So you got to find one, you got to not trade those picks away. And if you do trade those picks away, you got to find a gem in the second round. And that's the only way that works.
Well, it's tough.
Yeah. So if you're going to bring in, if you have a chance to bring in a Sid or a generational talent, which is not going to happen, then that's a completely different story. And what you can have that conversation then. But I don't think that's happening. You're not going to go get a Sidney Crosby. So any center that that's going to be available to you to get at the deadline is not worth an Easton Cowan, in my opinion.
No. And I think that would be a non-starter for them. I think they would move off draft capital before they move off a name like that. But I don't know. But you also look at their roster, and I don't want a rental, but going on the playoffs with Max Domi as your third line center, like we've talked about it all season. Like I just don't think that's a Stanley Cup long playoff run recipe at all.
No. Well, I think the plan here is to just let Minten play a little bit and see what he's got and if he can hang. And like he's waiver exempt, so I'm sure he'll be up and down a little bit. But I think the hope is maybe this kid can hang, and then we don't really have to go spend to bring in a depth center.
I don't think they want to do that. I mean, maybe he's so good that you have no choice but to leave him in. But I don't think that's the plan. I really don't. And we've said it. Like he looks like he's 10 years old. Like I don't know if I want to risk my 2025 playoff on a guy who is not ready for it. I don't want to put all my hopes into that. I don't know. It's a really good conversation because like their window is so interesting. Like their window is so long. Like it is so fucking long. Like usually teams have like a window to get something done, but you could really sit and make the argument that their window is another 5 seasons.
Their window to me is the rest of Auston Matthews' contract.
Yeah.
To me, that's their window.
So, I mean, they could go out in the first round this year and they could still bring Marner. Like they could do what they've been doing year after year after year, because I don't think their window's closed. Especially when they're, I mean, their decor is getting, like everyone they signed is great, but they're not young dudes. They don't have a dude under 30 years old in their top 4. So, I mean, that could be a concern going forward, but they've had a really, really long window here and they've got nothing done, but I don't see the window closing until the end of the Matthews contract. So it's just,
hey, and listen, the one thing about this year's team that is different from previous year's teams is they have what a lot of people are considering, myself included, one of the elite goaltending tandems in the league. And that's a game changer for anybody.
But here's the simple thing to end it on that would just make everybody's life so much easier talking about this team. Do I think this team is going to win a Stanley Cup? No, I don't. But if you just go into the playoffs and your star players play way fucking better than they have over the past 7 seasons, even though you may not see success, but by watching, by the numbers, if they are just way better than what they've been, like everyone will get off their backs. Like it would be a lot easier. Like I think we've been through so much pain that if they get to the second round, I think losing the first round is kind of like inexcusable at this point. Like they got to get past the first round, but not go to the second round, play Florida and get absolutely destroyed in 5 games. Like just go, like you play a really good team, you play your asses off. Maybe the other goalie's incredible or the other team's on a heater, but at the end of the day, you can sit back and be okay with the effort that those top 3 guys put in. And it's like, hey, these guys actually went out and gave it their all. And that's a positive moving forward into the next season. And then we can feel comfortable talking about numbers with Marner. It's just, that is the ultimate thing that's just going to make everybody feel better.
100%. All right, buddy. Florida Panthers on Wednesday, Tampa Bay Lightning on Saturday. We will be back in our usual Sunday morning time slot this week. We'll talk about those 2 games. If you want to join us for that, hit that like and subscribe button below. If you're listening to the audio version, like, subscribe, review. We really appreciate all of that. It helps us very, very much. So please do that. If you're listening to the audio version and you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Spread the word. Tell your friends.
We really appreciate it. We will see you guys on Sunday morning.